Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss with the second chapter, that is nothing but joining process. It is the second chapter in the module 4. First we need to know the definition of what is joining. Joining is nothing but it is a process of joining of two or more parts temporarily or permanently in presence of heat or without heat. We are going to call it as a joining. That is a process of joining two or more metals. The materials may be it may be having a many materials of joining, or it may have a two different materials, so that we can join it temporarily so that we can break it again, or we can join it permanently so that we cannot break it again. So that is done by the application of heat or without the heat. So that is nothing but a joining process. Joint obtained from brazing, soldering. There are other different techniques of joining process, that is brazing and soldering. Brazing and soldering are we are going to call it as those are temporary joints, so that after joining also we can break it. And one more thing is the bolts and nuts. You have seen the bolts and nuts, when you can tighten the nuts and bolt, or you can loosen it. Sometime you need to tighten it so that the firm gripping will be done between the two parts, or sometimes you are going to lose it so that the bolts and nuts will be separated off. Then we have a screws, that is also a temporary joint, we can call it. So we are going to call it as brazing, soldering, bolts and nuts and screws. We are going to call it as a temporary joint. And the joints such as done through a rivets and the welding, that we are going to call it as the permanent joints. Welding is also a process of joining process. And riveting, you might be seeing the rivets, so that it would be having a head, so that riveting and welding is also a permanent joint. Then next we are going to discuss about the welding. Welding is the process of joining two similar or dissimilar metal pieces by heating them to a suitable temperature and then fused together either with or without the application of pressure. That is nothing but a welding. Welding, we are going to call it as a joining process, where we are going to join two similar metals or two dissimilar metals by the application of the heat, so that we have to increase the heat up to certain temperature, and again we are going to fuse them together, we are going to join them together by the application of pressure, or without the pressure also we can join them. That is nothing but the process of welding. A slight gap exists between the workpieces which can be filled by a filler metal, but welding can be carried out without the use of the filler metal. So there will be a, whenever you want to join the two metals or dissimilar metals, there will be a slight gap between the two workpieces, so that gap can be filled by a filler metal. We are going to use the extra metal in the welding process, that is we are going to call it as a filler metal. That but welding can be carried out without the use of the filler metal also. Sometimes we are going to use the filler material to fill the gap, and sometimes we are not going to use the filler metal. So that is nothing but the welding process. Based on the application of pressure, welding can be classified into two types. So if you apply the pressure in the welding, we are going to classify the welding into two types. That is nothing but first one is the plastic welding or pressure welding, and the second one is the fusion welding or the non-pressure welding. First one is the plastic welding or pressure welding, second one is fusion welding or non-pressure welding. So first we are need to have a clear classification of the welding types of welding. There are two types of welding, as we have seen: fusion welding and pressure welding. In fusion welding, we have a homogeneous welding process and heterogeneous welding process. In homogeneous, we are going to call the gas welding as homogeneous welding and electric arc welding as a homogeneous welding. And in heterogeneous welding, we are going to call it as a brazing and soldering. We are going to call it as a heterogeneous welding. And next comes the plastic welding or the pressure welding. The metal parts to be joined or heated to the plastic state or above and then fused together by applying the external pressure. That is nothing but a plastic welding. Plastic welding is nothing but the metal parts are to be joined by the heat to the plastic state till it reaches the plastic temperature of the welding. We are going to heat it, and then we are going to fuse together by applying the external pressure. Here no filler material is used in this plastic welding. We are not going to use any type of filler material. Examples are, we are going to call it as the forge welding. Forge welding is an example for this one. Here in the plastic welding, we are going to take an example of the forge welding. We are going to call it as the forge welding as the plastic welding example for the plastic welding. Next comes the fusion welding. Fusion welding is the another type of the welding process in which parts to be welded are heated above their melting temperature and then allowed to solidify by cooling. Here the parts to be joined are heated above to their melting temperature. So all the metals will be having certain melting temperatures, so that we are going to heat it above the melting temperature and then we are going to allow it to solidify by the cooling technique. So that is nothing but a fusion welding. First we are going to heat it to a elevated temperature up to its melting temperature, and then we are going to hold it together till it solidifies by cooling. A simple example we can take here, silly example, that is joining of a paper, right? First you are going to apply the gum for the two ends of the paper, and then again we are going to press it up. We are going to hold it till the gum solidifies. So that is a simple example we can understand by the fusion welding. Here also we are going to take the parts, we are going to heat it above their melting temperature and then allow it to solidify by the cooling. Filler metal is used to fill the gap. Here also we are going to use the filler metal for the fusion welding, and examples are arc welding and the gas welding are the fusion welding process. But you should keep it in mind, plastic welding we are not going to use any type of filler metal, but in fusion welding we are going to use the filler metal to fill the gap. Next one is the electric arc welding. Electric arc welding, simply we can explain by this figure. So here we have a base metal, we are going to have a weld, and we are going to have a electrode here. That is, electrode will be having electrode coating, where it will be having a core wire, it will be having some welding atmosphere here due to the interaction of heat, and this is the arc pole, this is the arc stream, and the penetration of a depth of a weld can be seen in the image, and solidified slag can also be seen in the image. So here arc welding is a fusion welding process where high intensity of electric arc is used to melt the workpiece. We are going to use the high intensity electric arc, that is from the electrical supply. We are going to intense high electric arc, we are going to induce it, and it is used to melt the workpiece surface of the workpiece can be melted by the electric arc. A filler metal is used to fill the gap between the workpiece. We are going to use a filler metal to fill the gap between the workpiece. This filler metal is also called as electrode. We are going to call this electrode itself as a filler material in the electric arc welding, and it is made by metallic wire called core wire. Here we are going to use a metallic wire in between the electrode, that is nothing but a core wire. The material of a core wire is same or nearly with the same chemical composition as that of the base metal. Here we are going to use the material of the core wire is same as that or nearly with the same chemical composition as that of the base metal. Here the material of the core wire is made up of a clay, asbestos, silicon oxide, carbon, manganese, magnesium, and calcium oxide can be used in this electrode to make this upper surface of the electrode. The core is uniformly coated with a flux which prevents the oxidation of the molten metal. Here the core wire is completely coated with a flux. We are going to coat that core wire with the flux which prevents the oxidation of the metal. The oxidation of the metal can be reduced by this core. So the principle of arc welding is electrical arc is used as a source of heat, as we have seen in the figure, and arc is produced by striking electrode on the workpiece. Whenever you strike this electrode on the surface of the workpiece, the arc is going to be produced. A gap of 2 to 3 mm is maintained to generate an arc. We are going to maintain a gap of 2 to 3 mm for an electrode with the metal, and again heat generated by the arc is sufficient to melt the workpiece and the filler metal. Molten filler metal fill the gap between the workpiece and the form a homogeneous joint after the cooling. So you can observe the in the figure here. So this electric arc which it is going to be produced from the electrode is sufficient to melt this metal, and again this filler metal is we are going to we are going to use filler metal to fill the gap between the workpiece and form a homogeneous joint after the cooling process. So this is the clear explanation of the principle of arc welding. So working of arc welding is like this. Here we are going to have an electrode holder is used to hold the electrode, which is connected with one pole of the circuit and second pole is connected with the workpiece. One pole we are going to use it, that is a positive pole, we are going to use it for the electrode, and the negative phase we are going to use it for a workpiece. An electric arc is generated by striking the electrode with a workpiece. A small gap of distance 2 to 3 mm is maintained so as to continue the arc. So we are going to hold a positive mode for the electric electrode, so that it will going to produce a electric arc, and again it is going to strike the electrode with the workpiece. A small gap of 2 to 3 mm as explained in the principle is maintained so as to maintain the continue the arc, and electrical energy is converted into heat energy, and temperature of arc ranges from 5000 to 6000 degrees Celsius. The electrical energy that is going to be produced in this particular area, that is in the arc pole or the welding atmosphere, is having a temperature of 5000 to 6000 degree Celsius, and this high heat melts the base metal and tip of the filler metal, and molten filler metal is transformed to molten base metal and form the globules. Here, whenever temperature of 5000 to 6000 degrees Celsius is induced, here the electrode is going to melt, as well as the surface of the weld base metal is also going to melt, and again it is going to induce some here it is going to induce some molten filler metal is transferred to molten base metal, and in the form of globules it is going to be transferred, and the deposited metal fills the joint and form a single piece of metal. Here whatever the metal you are going to deposit there, and as a to form a joint, and it forms a single piece of the metal. Once the process is done, arc can now be extinguished by increasing the arc length. So once the process is going to be finished, then we are going to extinguish the increasing the arc length. So this is the working of arc welding, as the same figure what we have discussed here. Here there is the base metal, weld and solidified slag. We are going to create a temperature of 5000 to 6000 degrees Celsius in the arc welding. This is the working principle of electric arc welding. And welding using AC or DC current, we can use the alternate. AC means nothing but alternate current. We can use the direct current. So your circuit consists of step down transformer. Here this is a 2D figure of a electric arc welding, you can see here, and here the step down transformer or a DC generator, we are going to use welding machine, AC or DC power source or transfer and control. This is a step down transformer, and two cables, one cable is connected to a workpiece and another cable is connected to a electrode, and ground clamp, we are going to use the ground clamp for this process, electric arc welding process, because the extra current that is generated should be going to the ground. And the electrode holder, we are going to use the electrode holder for the process, and again the electrode, and this one is electrode. This electrode is responsible to create a electric arc, that is a spark, and it is going to create a temperature of 5000 to 6000 degrees Celsius. So this is the 2D figure which shows the electric arc welding, that is welding machine, AC or DC power source and controls. This is electrode holder, this is the electrode, this is arc, this is work cable, and this is electrode cable. This is positive, this is negative, and electrode cable is positive. Okay, electrode used in arc welding. We are going to use different types of electrodes in the arc welding. And here we are going to use different types of electrodes. The electrodes used in arc welding are consumable electrodes and non-consumable electrodes. Consumable electrodes are nothing but coated electrodes or plain or bare electrode we are going to call, and non-consumable electrodes are we are not going to consume any type of electrodes here. And welding fluxes, the different types of welding fluxes are the SiO2, silicon oxide, titanium oxide, magnesium oxide, and the aluminum oxide we are going to use as a typical fluxes, welding fluxes, and produces a gaseous shield to prevent oxidation of molten metal. Here these fluxes are responsible to produce a gaseous shield to prevent the oxidation of the molten metal. Chemically reacts with the oxides and forms a slag. Here it is going to react chemically with the oxides and forms a slag. The slag floats and covers the top portion of the molten metal and stabilize the arc. the slag portion what you have seen in the electric arc welding, it is going to cover the top portion of the molten metal and stabilize the arc. I am going to show you the slag layer. So this is called as a solidified slag layer which covers the molten metal, and it is going to create this prevent this molten metal from the oxidation process. So that is the weld fluxes will be doing. The slag floats and covers the top portion of the molten metal and stabilize the arc. And next one is the gas welding. Gas welding is nothing but it is a fusion type of welding process. The heat for melting the base metal is produced by the combustion of gases. Here this is also fusion type of welding process we are going to classify under the fusion welding. And this the heat for the melting the base metal is produced by the combustion of gases. Here we are going to use different gases to produce the fire or to produce the heat. So that heat we are going to use that heat and we are going to melt the base metal. So after melting the base metal we are going to weld it. So this is the gas welding process. Gases are mixed in a proper proportion to generate a required heat for the melting. We are going to mix different gases in a proper proportion, in the correct proportion we are going to mix it and generate the required heat for the melting. Combustion of gases takes place inside the pipe called welding torch. We have a welding torch. In the electric arc welding we have a electrode holder. Here we have a welding torch. Within the torch a proper amount of gas will be coming in, and again we are going to mix it with, and again the burning is going to take place within a pipe. The combination of gases used for this gas welding are mixture of oxygen and acetylene. We are going to call it as acetylene welding, and mixture of oxygen and hydrogen can also be used for the gas welding. So first one is the oxyacetylene process. Here the arrangement for the oxyacetylene process consists of two large cylinders. We are going to take one cylinder as oxygen, one cylinder as acetylene, and pressure regulator is there to regulate the pressure of oxygen as well as for the acetylene. And welding torch is an element where we are going to mix the perfect proportion of oxygen and acetylene in the process. And operation is very simple. So here in the oxygen, so this is the figure, and before going to that we are going to read about the operation. Oxygen and acetylene mixed equally in the torch, combustion of gases produce the flame. Here we are going to take one oxygen cylinder and we are going to take one acetylene cylinder. Both are connected with oxygen regulator and acetylene regulator to send the equal amount of oxygen and equal amount of acetylene to the welding torch. Then oxygen and acetylene are mixed equally in the torch, combustion of gases produce the flame. Temperature of the flame ranges from 3200 degrees Celsius, which is sufficient to melt the workpiece. Here the oxygen gas will be coming through this pipe and acetylene gas will be coming through this pipe. Both pipes are connected to a blowtorch or a welding torch. Here we are going to mix this oxygen and acetylene, and again we are going to produce a flame. That flame will be having a 3200 degrees Celsius of temperature, and that is sufficient to melt this base metal. So this is as a base metal. This is one metal, this is another metal. We are going to join that one, and this base metal is going to be joined by a temperature of 3200 degrees Celsius, which is produced by the welding torch. And again filler material is used to add additional metal, used as additional metal to fill the gap. Here we are going to use the filler metal. The deposited material bonds the joint to form a single piece of metal. Here we are going to use the filler rod. We are going to use the extra filler rod here. So this heat which is coming from the welding torch is going to melt the base metal, and this filler rod is going to fill the gap. And again we are going to create the perfect joint here. So this is a simple explanation of oxyacetylene process. So this is the acetylene cylinder cap and this is the oxygen cylinder cap. We are going to use it here. So we have a safety valve for the oxygen cylinder valve is there, and again oxygen regulator is there. So very simple process of welding. So when say one cylinder we are going to take acetylene, another cylinder we are going to take oxygen, equal proportion of oxygen and acetylene we are going to bring it to a blowtorch or welding torch, and here equal proportion is going to mix, and again we are going to produce the flame. This flame is having a temperature of 3200 degrees Celsius, and it is going to melt the base metal. and again this base metal is used with one filler rod. Filler rod will fill the gap between the two base metals, and again it is going to be joined. So this is nothing but oxyacetylene welding process. Next one is tungsten inert gas welding. We are going to call it as TIG welding. That is tungsten inert gas welding. Here, this is also a type of gas welding process. So we are going to use the gas supply. We are going to use the gas, and again we are going to use the welding power source here. In welding power source, one wire it is connected to the work, and another wire it is going to connected. We are going to connect it to a electrode holder. The gas supply is going to be sent to the electrode holder. So here we have a tungsten electrode that we are going to use is the tungsten electrode here, and again we have a insulating shield for this. Again the gas will be passage, and again we are going to have a filler rod for this, and this is a shielding gas that we are supplying. We are going to supply the gas here, and that gas is going to create a shield for the welding process, and this is the work is the workpiece. And again the from the welding power source we are going to connect it to a electrode holder. That is one connection, positive connection. Negative connection we are going to connect it to a work. Through the gas cylinder, the gas is going to come to a tungsten electrode. In the tungsten electrode, the gas is going to burn the tungsten electrode. It is going to create a high temperature here, and that gas we are going to pass it, that flame we are going to pass it to the base metal. The base metal will be melted, and again filler rod we are is going to fill the gap. This is nothing but tungsten inert gas welding. We have another type of gas welding, that is nothing but magnesium inert gas welding. Here we are going to use the magnesium that is a inert gas we are going to use here. That gas supply we are going to send it to a torch, and again we have a DC welding machine here. One welding link is connected to a negative mode, is connected to a workpiece, and positive mode is connected to a torch. And again the gas supply through a regulator, it is going to come to a torch. And again here we are going to have a wire driving unit. This wire reel is nothing but we are going to use it as a filler metal, and whenever the gas is going to come at this particular torch, it is going to melt this filler metal as well as the base metal, and again it is going to perform the joint. So this is nothing but the magnesium inert gas welding technique. So these are very simple techniques, and again we are going to have a question on magnesium inert, maybe a question on magnesium inert gas welding or tungsten inert gas welding will be asked in the exam. And the next one is types of flames produced in the gas welding. There are different types of flames that we are going to produce in a gas welding process. So based on the mixture ratio of oxygen and acetylene, flame can be divided into three flames. We are going to divide the oxyacetylene welding, we are going to divide it into three flames. First one is natural flame. We have a equal proportion of oxygen and acetylene. Oxidizing flame, here we are going to obtain a excess amount of oxygen, more amount of oxygen will be there in the oxidizing flame. And in the reducing flame we have a excess acetylene is present in the reducing flame. And then here we can differentiate three types of flames here: neutral flame, oxidizing flame, or reducing flame. Here in inner cone you can observe the color here, that is 3300 degrees Celsius, and outer envelope is 1200 degrees and 1260 degrees Celsius, and that is nothing but a neutral flame, where in neutral flame equal proportion of oxygen and acetylene will be there. And on oxidizing flame, excess amount of oxygen will be there here. And here inner cone is a pointed end, and outer envelope is small and narrow. This type of flame we are going to call it as oxidizing flame, where excess amount of oxygen will be there. And the next one is where we are going to call it as reducing flame or carburizing flame, where excess amount of acetylene is present. That is bright luminous inner cone will be coming at the rear end or front end of the flame, and again acetylene feather and blue envelope is there. So this is responsible to create a what is that, reducing flame, that where excess amount of acetylene gas is present. Okay, so these are the three different types of fumes we are going to observe in the oxyacetylene welding process. So you can look for the temperature here: 3300 degrees Celsius for inner cone and 1260 degrees Celsius for the blue envelope. Next comes the other joining process, that is the soldering and brazing. Soldering and brazing is also a metal joining process, we are going to call, and here only filler metal is melted, not a base metal. In a soldering and brazing, we are going to heat the filler metal, not the base metal. We are going to heat it here, and lower temperature than welding. Here we can expect a very low temperature than the welding. And filler metal distributed by capillary action. We are going to use the capillary action to deposit the filler metal over the gap. And again, strength of the joint is typically stronger than the filler metal itself or weaker than the base metal. Here we can differentiate it into two strength of typically joining processes. Here that is it is maybe having a stronger than the filler metal itself. So the it will be stronger than the filler metal, or sometimes it will be weaker than the base metal. Also that depends on the strength of the joining, we are going to say. And can join dissimilar metals. Here we can join the dissimilar metals, and less heat can join thinner sections. And very less amount of heat is used to what is that? It's used to melt the filler metal so that it can join the thin sections also relative to welding. And excessive heat during service can be weaken the joint. Excessive heat, so to fill the what is that to fill the filler metal at a faster extent, we are going to use more amount of heat. At that time the more amount of filler metal will be melted. At that particular time excessive heat is produced, and during the service we can weaken the joint. Sometimes it may have a tendency to have a weak joints in the soldering and brazing. And solder, we are going to call it as equal to a filler metal. And alloys of tin we are going to use here, that is silver, bismuth and lead. And melt point typically below 450 degrees Celsius. Here the melting point of the soldering is below 450 degrees Celsius. Flux we are going to use it here, and it is used to clean joint and prevent oxidation. Here also the flux is used in the soldering, and it is going to clean the joint and prevent the oxidation process. And the various applications of this soldering are manufacturing of printed circuit boards, that is PCBs. We can see that is the manufacturing of printed circuit boards. We are going to use the soldering. Pipe joining, copper pipe. To join the copper pipe, we are going to use the soldering technique. And jewelry manufacturing, the jewelries that ornaments we are going to call, and to join that one we are going to use the soldering. And typically non-load bearing, where there is no load, we are going to use the soldering technique. And next one is the manual PCB soldering. How the PCB soldering can be done. This is a soldering process, soldering iron and solder wire. We are going to call it as the PTH, pin through hole connectors. In this we are going to soldering of iron and solder wire can be observed here. This is solder gun and solder wire. And heating lead and placing the solder. Here we are going to heat the lead, that is filler material, by the solder gun. And again we are going to place the solder over the circuit, and we are going to heat it for 2 to 3 seconds and place wire opposite to iron. We are going to heat the solder gun for 2 to 3 seconds and place the wire. We are going to bring the lead wire near the electrode gun, and again we are going to melt it. So trim excess lead. Wherever if we have excess lead present over the circuits, we are going to trim it off. So this is the pin through hole connector, that is a manual PCB soldering. We are going to explain it by the simple images. Then brazing technique. Brazing technique is nothing but use of low melt point filler metal to fill thin gap between melting surfaces to be joined utilizing capillary action. We are going to use the capillary action here. Here we have a low melting point filler metal. This is very important. We are going to use the filler metal which is having very low melting point. At a very small amount of temperature, it is going to melt to fill the thin gap between the mating surfaces to be joined by utilizing the capillary action. Filler metals we are going to call it as a spelter. This includes the aluminum, magnesium and copper alloys. Melting point typically above 450 degrees Celsius. We are going to use the melting point typically above 450 degrees Celsius, that is there for aluminum, magnesium and copper. Flux is also used in the process. And types of brazing classified by heating method. We are having a classification of brazing that is classified based on the heating methods of a brazing. Then the applications are, we are going to use this brazing technique for automotive joining tubes. We have to join the automotive joining tubes. We are going to use it in the automotive industry, that is joining the tubes. And pipe or tubing joining, right? So we are going to use the pipe joining or tubes joining we are going to use here. And electrical equipment joining wires, we are going to use it in the electrical equipment, that is joining of wires. And jewelry making, here brazing can also be used in the jewelry making. Joint can possess significant strength, here joint can possess a good amount of strength we are going to call, and that is the brazing technique. And comparison between welding, soldering and brazing, right? Here we are going to compare the welding with the soldering and brazing. First point is melting temperature. In a melting temperature, welding has a it is a high temperature process where the base metals are heated above their melting temperature. The base metal itself is heated above melting temperature. Here in soldering and brazing, it is a low temperature process where the base metal are not melted, that we have seen in the process. And filler metal, the filler material used is made up of same material as that of the base metal. Here you can use the filler material same as that of the base metal in the welding, but in the soldering and brazing, filler materials used are not the same as that of the base metal. That is very important. Formation of weld joint, how the joints are going to form in the welding. Joint is formed by the solidification of molten metal with molten base metal. Here we are going to use the solidification process. After heating, we are going to solidify them, we are going to cool them in the welding. But in brazing, joint is formed by diffusion of molten filler metal. Here we are going to use the diffusion process of molten filler metal in the soldering and brazing. Strength of joint, the strength of joint in the welding is, strength of joint obtained in welding is much stronger than parent metal. Previously we have a parent metal, but the joint we have produced is much stronger than the parent metal. But in soldering and brazing, strength of joint obtained is very low compared to the welding. Heat affected zone, in the heat affected zone is process carried out at high temperature, metal adjacent to weld portion called heat affected zone. In the welding, process carried out is at very high temperature, so that metal adjacent to the weld portion, we are going to call it as heat affected zone. In soldering and brazing, heat affected zone is negligible as the process carried out at low temperature. You know that it is at 450 or slightly above 450 degrees Celsius in soldering and brazing. So heat affected zone is negligible as the process carried out at low temperature. Surface finish. Surface finish in the welding, it requires finishing operation like grinding and filing, etc. In soldering and brazing, joints can be used without finishing operation. Finishing is needed in welding, but it is not needed in soldering and brazing. Applications are in the welding are used for fabrication and structural application in the welding, but in soldering and brazing used to join thin sheet metal, pipe and wires. So these are the main differences between the welding and brazing. This is very important, and you should keep it in mind for the exam point of view. So this completes the chapter of joining process in the module 4. Okay, and next a small chapter we are going to cover in the same module 4, that is nothing but the gear drives. Here we need to understand about the different types of gears. We are going to study about the velocity ratio, different some small problems in the gear drives, and different types of gears we are going to study in this particular chapter, and we are going to know about the different functions of gears. First we need to start with the gear drives, right? Gear drives, here what we need to know about them is the types of gears. Here we have a different types of gears. You can, I have put one figure here so that you can see the different gears. Different types of gears are engaged in different manner. So typical image which shows the gearbox control in the vehicles, we are seeing here. And here there are different types of gears. The different types of gears, and these are nothing but the gears, the teeth above the circular surface, we are going to call it as gears. And here the types of gears are, we have a spur gear, helical gear, bevel gear and worm gears for the syllabus, worm gear for the syllabus. So we are need to study about spur gears, helical gears, dual gears, and worm gears. Here, so this is the image which shows the spur gear. Where here, this is the shape of the teeth. Here, the spur gears are having straight teeth as we compare with the different types of gears. So and these spur gears are used in transmitting torque between the parallel shafts. We are going to use the transmission for the transmission of a power or a torque. We are going to we are going to transmit the torque between the two parallel shafts. For that, we are going to use the spur gears. This is the image which shows the spur gears. This is a cylindrical gear. Tooth trace is parallel to the axis. Here, the tooth trace is parallel to the axis. This is a highly demanded gear which is easy to manufacture and to assemble. So you can easily assemble this and it is easy to manufacture. So this is called as a spur gear, and this is type of torque transmission will be done in the spur gears. Here spur gears are used to transmit power between two parallel shafts. The teeth on these gears are cut straight and are parallel to the shaft to which they are attached. As we have already said, this is the tooth shape which is parallel to the axis of the gear or the shaft. So the teeth on these gears are cut straight and parallel to the shafts to which they are attached. Spur gears, the characteristics of spur gears are a simplest and most economical type of gear to manufacture. Here we can, as we have already said, it is easy to manufacture and it is economical. Speed ratios of up to 8, in extreme cases up to 20 for one step, that is single reduction design, and up to 45 for two-step design, and up to 200 for three-step design can be achieved by this spur gears. These are the extreme characteristics we can observe in the spur gears. And the limitations are not suitable when a direction change between two shafts is required. It is not suitable whenever there is a change in the direction of the shaft is required. So that is the drawback of this, and produce noise because the contact occurs over the full face. It is going to produce a huge amount of noise, so that the contact occurs over the full face width of the mating teeth instantaneously. Full face width in the sense the contact is firmly over the full face width. So this creates the noise in the spur gears. Next comes the helical gears. This is the image of helical gears. These are used in transmitting torques between parallel and non-parallel shafts. They are not noisy as spur gears. So this is a cylindrical gear. This is also a cylindrical gear. Tooth trace has helix curve. Here we are going to observe the tooth image here, so that it is having the helix curve. Helical gear provide more strength, less oscillation, and lower noise level compared with spur gear. Here the noise is less and it has a more strength, and less oscillation is observed in the helical gear. And however, helical gears provides a thrust load to axis direction. It is going to provide a thrust load to the axis direction. If changed a rotating direction, then thrust load is reversed. We are going can reverse the thrust load also in the helical gears. The characteristics of helical gears are: the longer teeth cause helical gears to have the following differences from the spur gears of the same size. What is the main characteristic difference between spur gear and helical gear? We can look here. Tooth strength is greater because the teeth are longer than the teeth of a spur gear or equivalent pitch diameter. Here you can observe the teeth of the helical gear. Here it is longer as compared to the spur gear, and it is going to provide a firm grip for the helical gear, and it can carry higher loads than spur gears because of greater surface contact of the teeth. Here we have a greater surface contact between the teeth, and it is going to carry a huge amount of load as compared to the spur, and it can be used to connect parallel shafts as well as non-parallel non-intersecting shafts. Here we can observe the connection between the two parallel and non-parallel shafts, and as well as for the non-intersecting shafts can be done in the helical gears. Quieter, even, and higher speeds, and are durable. So the spur gear, we know that it is going to produce a more amount of noise and vibration. So it is not there in the helical gears. The limitations of helical gears are: gears in mesh produce thrust forces in axial direction. It's going to produce a thrust force in axial direction, and expensive compared to the spur gears. Here the design is quite difficult for a helical gear, and it is expensive compared to the spur gears. Next comes the bevel gears. Bevel gears are nothing but fuel gears are nothing but here it is used to transmit rotary motion between the intersecting shafts. Here we are going to use the bevel gears to transmit the rotary motion between the intersecting shafts. In 2D figure you can observe here the shaft, it is rotating in this direction, but you can transfer that power to the another horizontal shaft that is present. Teeth are formed on conical surfaces. The teeth could be straight or spiral. Here we can observe the straight teeth or spiral teeth in the bevel gears. A bevel gear is shaped like a section of a cone and primarily used to transfer the power between the intersecting shafts at right angles. As you can observe in the 2D figure, it is going to transfer the power from intersecting shaft at right angles. That is the main important character of the bevel gears. And the teeth of a bevel gear may be straight or spiral. Straight gears is performed for peripheral speeds up to 1000 feet per minute. Above that, they tend to be noisy. So we can observe the straight is for the bevel gears, and we can expect the speed of 100 feet per minute, and above, if you go above that one, it will be noisier for the bevel gear. Characteristics of bevel gears are designed for the efficient transmission of power and motion between the intersecting shafts. We have already seen here it is an intersecting shaft, so that we can easily transfer the power. A good example of a bevel gear is seen as a main mechanism for the hand drilling machine. In the hand drill machine, we are going to use the bevel gear technique, as the handle of the drill is turned in a vertical direction and the bevel gear change the rotation of the chuck to a horizontal rotation. So in the hand drilling machine, you can easily observe, if you come across with any of the hand drilling machine, or you can view the YouTube video of a hand drilling machine, so that the handle of the drill is turned in a vertical direction, but the bevel gear can change its rotation of the chuck to a horizontal rotation. You can view the animation of the hand drilling machine, so that you are going to easily observe the bevel gear there. Then permit a minor adjustment during the assembly and allow for some displacement due to a deflection under the operating loads without concentrating the load on the end of the tooth. It won't concentrate the load on the end of the tooth, so that the load can be equally distributed for the overall end of the teeth, and it is permit a minor adjustment during the assembly can also be done in the bevel gears. So next comes the worm gears. Worm gears, these are this is the image showing the worm gear, and these are used for transmitting motion between non-parallel and non-transmitting shafts depending on the number of teeth engaged, called a single or double. Worm gear mostly used when speed ratio is quite high for 3 or more. So this is a worm gear, and it is connected to one of the spur gear. So the worm gears are used in the speed ratio of quite both 3 or higher. So worm gears are used to transmit the power between the two shafts that are at right angles to each other and are non-intersecting. Here also we can use the worm gear for the transmit of the power between the two shafts at right angles. Worm gears are special gears that resemble screws and can be used to drive spur gears or helical gears. Here we are going to use the worm gear that is in the form of the screws, and it is in contact with the spur gear or helical gear. Here in the figure it is going to be contact with the spur gear, and again we can use it for the helical gear also. Worm gearing is essential special form of a helical gearing in which the teeth have line contact when the axis of the driving and driven shafts are usually at right angles and do not intersect. As we have already said, worm gears are used to transmit the power at right angles to each other. Then the characteristics of a worm gears are meshes are self-locking. Whenever you mesh the worm gears, those are self-locking. They won't detach easily. Worm gears have an interesting feature that no other gear has. That is, the worm can easily turn the gear. The worm gear can easily turn the other gear, but the gear cannot turn the worm. That is very special character that the worm gear is having. Here the worm gear can turn the other gear, but other gear cannot turn the worm gears. That is a special character of the worm. This is because the angle on the worm is so shallow that when the gear tries to spin it, the friction between the gear and the worm holds the worm in place. The feature is useful for machines such as conveyor systems, in which the locking feature can act as a brake for the conveyor whenever the motor is not turning. So that is very important in the excavators. You can see that is whenever it is moving on top side, whenever the current goes, it is going to stop at one particular point. It won't come back to its original position, isn't it? So that at that particular time we can use the worm gears as an arrangement. So worm gear is always used as the input gear, that is the torque is applied to the input end of the worm shaft by a driven sprocket or electrical motor. Always worm gear we are going to use it as the input gear, because the torque we are going to apply at the input end of the worm shaft or the electrical motor. Then the next character is best suited for applications where the great ratio reduction is required between the driving and the driven shaft. Whenever we need a higher reduction of the power, there at that particular time we are going to use the worm gears. It is common for worm gears to have a reduction of 20:1. Reduction value is given here, you should remember, and it is common for the worm gears which have a reduction of 20:1 or even up to 300:1 or greater. Whenever there is a reduction, we can use the worm gears here, that is from 20:1 to the 300:1 reduction. Then the limitations of the worm gears are yield low efficiency because of high sliding velocities across the teeth. Lower efficiency can be achieved from the worm gear due to the sliding velocities, thereby causing high friction losses. High friction losses are there because that friction holds the worm wheel firmly at its point. So that is very important here. And when used in high torque applications, the friction causes the wear on the gear teeth, and erosion of the restraining surface can also be done in the worm gear. Erosion is higher. So okay, next we shall discuss about the difference between the belt drives and gear drives. Here, before discussing this one, we need to study about the belt drives, but belt drives has not dealt in this particular chapter, so I am not going to go for this belt drive and gear drive. And again, we need to explain about this addendum dedendum circles. So for a gear, that is gear terminology, we need to discuss. And again we need to discuss with velocity ratio of gear drives and gear trains. But in the, if I put it in the PPTs and directly if I explain you in the presentation, so it may be not clear. So better I am going to make this video a separate one by writing or solving the velocity ratio and gear drives and gear trains in the separate paper. And again I am going to upload that video in the coming classes. So up to this one, you just study about the different types of gears, that is spur gears, helical gears, bevel gears, and the worm gears. So 4 different gears are very important, and this difference as well as the velocity ratio I am going to upload in the next video. Okay, thank you very much. Stay home and stay safe.